My story sort of overlaps and adds on and twists around from all the other stories I've heard. So, my story is saying goodbye to my mother, and it's a musical story. So, I'm going to begin with my childhood. I grew up in a very musical house. My mother played records on the Victrola all the time. And she was always learning lyrics. And the lyrics were these handwritten things that were taped to the refrigerator. And one of the things she and my father really valued was taking us to concerts in Stern Grove in San Francisco. We were growing up in Palo Alto, which is now the home of Google and Facebook. At that time, it was just a small town adjacent to Stanford University. So, to prepare us for these Stern Grove concerts of Gilbert and Sullivan and Rodgers and Hammerstein, we were taught the lyrics to each of the songs for the musicals we were going to hear. So we learned all about South Pacific and how to wash that man right out of their hair, and we learned about When You Walk Through a Storm, and about I'm Called Little Buttercup. And by the time we were seated in the grass at Stern Grove, I'd be in tears, hearing these songs that we were so prepared for. Now, the problem was I cannot carry a tune, I don't have any sense of rhythm, and my parents wanted to have music night, and they got me set up with this violin teacher who was supposed to be super good. Her name was Jenny Rudin, and she had launched all kinds of fantastic violinists, and basically I squeaked. And I tried, and my main memory of Jenny Rudin was going to the class, going to her home, and she said, "Your fingernails are too long. How can you play with such long nails?" And she took out the worst fingernail clippers and massacred my fingers, and I just hated her. And at one point, my dad showed me all the canceled checks that he had given to pay for these lessons. And there was just this part of me that kept wishing, why couldn't I impress my parents in any other way? Why couldn't they realize that I'm a good writer, or that I'm a good photographer, or that I had the makings of a social anthropologist and I knew tons of stuff about social theory? None of it mattered. All that mattered is that I could be part of music night, and the problem was I couldn't. So 2 weeks ago, I actually came full circle on this. And what happened is, my mom is 10 years older than your mom. She was born in 1919, and she was very, very close to the end of her life. And there had been so many close calls over the last 12 years. And so many times I jumped on a plane at the last minute, spending $278 on Southwest, getting the last minute special, or driving up super fast to Palo Alto, and then we'd give her some chicken matzo ball soup and she'd be revived. And so I was really skeptical towards every time there'd be another call. But this time I could pretty much tell that this was the call. So I talked to my boss, and she said, yes, take off time. So about 10 days ago, I flew up to Palo Alto, actually to San Jose, and my sister met me, and she said, well, there's not much left to Mom, but you get the next 3 days, because I've had enough. She'd flown her sister out, she'd got her son to visit every day. There had been all the relatives that had called, and then there was me. So I came to her bedside, and the first thing I did is I dialed up YouTube on my phone, and I played When You Walk Through a Storm. And we both started singing. She was in perfect time. She knew every lyric. And the hospice nurse next to us was just tearing. She couldn't believe what I was doing. And then I dialed in Uffen Pripachik, this is a Yiddish folk song. If you grew up Jewish, you know the song. And she, of course, knew every single word. And then I went to Fly Me to the Moon, and she knew every bit of that, and I just kept going and going and going. And then I'd cry, and then I'd play more songs, and then late that night I'd got a message from Verizon that I'd run through all my data. And so the next morning, I bought more data and started all over again. And then we started with Imagine and John Lennon, because she had learned all those words, because she was a peacenik and it was her perfect song. And then we played through every song I could figure out and remember from The Sound of Music. And then finally I played Joan Baez's Hush Little Baby, Don't You Cry. You know your mama was born to die. And I just burst into tears all over again. And then on Saturday morning, a chaplain / rabbi came over, and he said, you need to forgive your mom. Ask her forgiveness for whatever. It's all the things that you need to forgive her for. And and so I just started. And these were things that I had just been holding back. And so I forgave her for not pegging my pants tight enough when I was in high school. I forgave her for not letting me wear white lipsticks in junior high. I forgave her for criticizing what I was wearing when I was on the Donahue show, rather than saying how great it is my daughter's on the Donahue show talking about her new book. And I forgave her for yelling at me because when I drove up from LA to Palo Alto to see her for Passover, and all she could say is, "You're late." And I said, "There was traffic." She said, "You're late." And then I cried, and I forgave her, and I forgave her some more. And then the rabbi sang Kiddush for her, and she sang right along. She knew every word. She was right in time with him. And then the next day, she took her last breath.